Good morning and welcome to the Arlington Metaphysical Chapel. I'm Reverend Nancy Jones, and I'm glad that you've chosen to join us today on Sunday, July 19th, 2020. The scripture reference this morning is from the book of Matthew, chapter 18, verse 3. Truly, I say to you, unless you turn and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Thus ends the reading of the scripture. I believe that what Jesus meant when he said these words is that if we would approach life with the attitude that we really don't already know it all, that life could be a wondrous journey of discovery, surprise, and adventure. Instead of being a pain, life could be a joy. We could open ourselves to new adventures through our hearts and minds, adventures of understanding ourselves and life itself better, rather than being so close-minded as adults tend to be, always trying to protect ourselves from failure and ridicule. If we could be open to life, as little children are, as they enjoy every new day as an opportunity to discover another person, thing, or situation, we would not be so hard on ourselves and so critical of other people and or situations. It's all in how we look at things. How do you look at situations that arise in your life? Do you tend to look at the glass as half empty or half full? I recently read a story about a young girl that was away at school in her freshman year of college. She wrote the following letter home to her parents. It read, "Dear Mom and Dad, just thought I'd drop you a note to fill you in on my plans. I've fallen in love with a guy named Jim. He quit high school after the 11th grade to get married. About a year ago, he got a divorce. We've been going steady for 2 months now and plan to get married in the fall. Until then, I've decided to move into his apartment. I think I might be pregnant. At any rate, I dropped out of school last week, although perhaps maybe I'd like to finish college sometime in the future." On the next page, the letter continued. "Mom and Dad, I just want you to know that everything I've written so far in this letter is false. None of it is true. But, Mom and Dad, it is true that I got a C- in French and flunked out of my math class. And it is true that I'm going to need some more money for my tuition payments." Failure can sound like success. It just depends on the perspective. The measuring device we use to evaluate our success or failure is often more important than the success or failure itself, for to a large extent, it determines that success or that failure. This measuring device that I'm referring to is our thoughts, and the power that these thoughts have on our everyday lives is immense. It can make the difference on whether we're happy or sad, whether we view our lives as a success or as a failure, whether we view others as a success or a failure, and not because of the reality of the situation, but rather as to how we perceive the situation. It's all a matter of perspective. Here's another story. 3 people were visiting and viewing the Grand Canyon: an artist, a pastor, and a cowboy. As they stood on the edge of that massive geological marvel, each one responded with a cry of exclamation. The artist said, "Ah, what a beautiful scene to paint." The minister cried, "What a beautiful example of the handiwork of God." The cowboy mused, "What a terrible place to lose a cow." The cowboy could only see the problems the Grand Canyon placed in front of him. Sometimes we are that same way. It's easy to be pessimistic. It's easier to look at what's less attractive about the situation rather than what's most attractive about the situation. Every now and then we have to step back and look at the bigger picture. In the world of daily living and the many problems and issues that confront us and challenge our self-worth, we need to step back and look at what the situation actually is, and how and where we fit into it. It's not what you think, but how you think that can make all the difference. We are told that we have been given the mind of Christ, a different way of thinking, a radical, countercultural perspective that sometimes flies in the face of convention wisdom. We're told to sanctify our minds. Sanctification is a fancy theological term that simply means becoming more like God. We often consider sanctification in terms of being more like God in our morals and behaviors. But it's really about trying to see things the way that the God within would perceive them. We simply need to think things through instead of making fast judgments. What's worse than not thinking something through? Perhaps it's not thinking at all, or doing things mindlessly, carelessly, without ever assessing the convictions that are behind many of the choices that we make. Again, it's not what we think, but how we think about what we choose to do. Consider this story. A shoe manufacturer who was thinking of opening a store in a remote village in Africa sent 2 salesmen to the undeveloped territory. One salesman sent a message back to the company. Prospect here nil. No one wears shoes. The telegram that the other salesman sent back enthusiastically stated, market potential is terrific. Everyone is barefooted and in need of shoes. If you were the president of this company, which salesman would you want to believe? What would you decide to do? Would you view the glass as half empty or half full? It's easy to judge something as bad. However, what we miss when we do this is the opportunity to find the good in it. It's important to acknowledge that the same scenario that brings us bondage, lack, or misery can also bring us freedom, prosperity, and joy. The choice is up to us. We can look at what we think is a bad situation and commiserate in it, or we can look at a situation and ask ourselves, what good is there to behold? The first option keeps us in bondage, and the second liberates us. Donald E. Williams was a naval officer and NASA astronaut, among one of the first to fly the space shuttle, first as a pilot and then as a commander on his second mission. He logged almost 300 hours in space. He was once quoted as saying, "For those who have seen the Earth from space, and for the hundreds and perhaps thousands more who will, the experience most certainly changes your perspective. The things that we share in our world are far more valuable than those which divide us." The perspective of reality is lost when we view life from the range of a short experience. I'm entirely convinced that the bigger our perspective, the more we embrace oneness. Research has shown that since mankind has been traveling into outer space, astronauts have experienced a shift in consciousness. It has to do with being able to see the Earth from above, where the geographic boundaries disappear, as do the reasons for conflict. The Earth simply looks as one. The problems of Earth seem insignificant from that distance. Philosopher and writer Frank White called it the overview effect, while Apollo 14 astronaut Edgar Mitchell described it as an instant global consciousness, an interconnected euphoria. When we start to get upset about something, we can remind ourselves to put that event into a larger context, the truth of oneness. Think about all that is transpiring around the globe, and then ask yourself if what you're dealing with truly warrants being so upset. After this internal conversation, you'll probably be able to redirect your thinking, raise your vibration, and be in a state of peace, all of which are in alignment with your divinity, your oneness with God, and with all that is. Research has shown that a regular practice of meditation can net the same change in consciousness that being in outer space creates. So this shift from seeing the glass from half empty to half full is entirely available to everyone. You don't have to be an astronaut. Neuroscience shows that the optimist and pessimist both live in your brain. We all have the ability to dream of great success, and we all have the ability to fear that we might fail. Both thoughts are imaginary, but the motivation center of your brain does not know that. If you believe you will succeed, if you maintain consistent hope and faith and optimism, your brain will chart a course toward success. It will find creative solutions to the most difficult problems because that's what your brain does best. But if you ruminate on your worries, fears, and doubts, your brain will react as if there's a genuine threat, causing you to become more anxious, more overwhelmed, or even depressed. Your brain will literally give up. Hope, faith, and optimism are the best ways to exercise your brain. And even though every human brain has an inner critic, a pessimist, who resides in your right prefrontal lobe, we still have the freedom to believe in a positive outcome and be the optimist who governs decision-making processes in the left prefrontal lobe. Those who consistently maintain hope and optimism are the happiest and most successful people in the world. Which inner voice will you listen to, the negative or positive one? Whichever one you choose to follow will shape the course of your future. Every time you catch yourself having a negative thought or feeling, immediately focus your attention on 3 to 5 positive aspects in your life. Think about the things you did well today. Reflect on the things you feel grateful for. Appreciate the tiny pleasures you've experienced in the past 24 hours. Research has shown that if you can do this for an entire week, your self-esteem will continue to grow for a period of at least 3 months. That's pretty amazing, don't you think? Perspective is everything when you're experiencing challenges in life. With all the things going on, it's often easy to get monovision. We get so caught up with what is happening right in front of us that we don't stop to take in the bigger picture and realize that there's more to life. Remember that your spirit is unlimited in its creative potential, which means that your possibilities are unlimited. We simply need to look around and avail ourselves of the myriad of options that are available to us. Know that life is a learning process, complete with new lessons we may not have encountered before. If we can understand this, we can see that there are numerous opportunities for growth and learning so that we can become more enlightened. And if you ever feel that perhaps you've made a mistake, just know that the word mistake does not necessarily mean that we've experienced personal failure or fallen short of some unspoken goal. Pull the word apart, and you will find that all you did was mistake a situation as being something other than what it really was or is. We often do this with people too. We can mistake people and or things that you may have thought you heard them say, leading to many misunderstandings. When we think that we've made a mistake, it's time to readjust our thinking. Think again. Think a new, higher thought. This is an opportunity to become born again by looking at life in new ways, with new eyes, shifting our minds, thus creating a changed heart and or a changed direction. So give this some consideration today. What kind of thoughts will you have? Remember, the power is in your mind. Different kinds of thoughts will produce different types of effects. Know that there is but one final truth or reality, but it is always presenting us with varying forms of itself. These forms are temporarily misshapen by the creative power of our own thoughts. We must not forget that what we call our thought is really the place where we are using creative mind itself. Our thought is creative, not because we will it so, but because it already is so. We cannot change this nor escape from its effects in our lives. Realize that the Spirit with you manifests itself as perfect harmony and that every cell, atom, and organ of your body is functioning according to the divine law. We must erase the thoughts of yesterday that would rob us of today's happiness. We must heal ourselves from worry. Faith must overcome fear. We must trust that the future is bright with promise. It beckons us forward into a more complete realization of our own worth and of our rightful place in the universe. Know that the metaphysical perception of life helps us remember that all circumstances and situations can be used for awakening to greater spiritual truth, awareness, and freedom. We are in a time of what many call unprecedented change, with difficulties arising in many places. Spiritual awareness does not deny that this is so, but it does call us up to seek higher meaning and to embrace our oneness with God and with all that is. Visualize and know that your glass is not half empty, but half full. Work to make it completely full. Work so that you can grow in stature and in strength, and most importantly, in wisdom and in love, so that you can be like the little children who are able to enter the kingdom of heaven. And may it be so.